In 1993, American racing officials looked at a man with 30 Grand Prix victories and a Formula One World Championship and classified him as a rookie. Nigel Mansell was 39 years old, the reigning champion of the most competitive racing series on the planet, and before America would let him race at Indianapolis, he had to pass a rookie driving test. 6 months later, the rookie was their national champion. This is the story of the Lola T93 and the Season 1 British exile took on an entire continent and beat it. Number 8. The champion nobody wanted. To understand why the reigning Formula One world champion ended up racing ovals in America, you have to go back to the autumn of 1992. Mansell had just delivered one of the most dominant seasons the sport had ever seen. Driving the Williams FW14B, a machine bristling with active suspension and traction control, he won 9 Grand Prix and wrapped up the title with 5 races still to run. It was the culmination of 13 seasons of trying, 3 runner-up finishes, broken bones, and near misses. He called it the happiest day of his life. It lasted about 24 hours. Mansell would later say that a handful of golden drivers controlled the entire Formula One market in that era, and he had just discovered exactly where he stood in that hierarchy. Word reached Mansell that Alain Prost, who had spent 1992 on the sidelines, had already agreed a deal to drive for Williams in 1993. The team had signed his replacement while the champagne was still cold. Negotiations with Frank Williams dragged on, but Mansell felt the ground had shifted under him and that he was never given a genuine chance to stay. Matters came to a head at Monza in September. Mansell called a press conference on the Sunday morning of the Italian Grand Prix, and even a last-minute offer relayed to him moments before he walked in could not stop what came next. He announced he would not drive for Williams in 1993, that he was retiring from Formula One, and that he was considering a move to IndyCar racing. A room full of journalists who had come to watch a Grand Prix suddenly had the biggest story in world motorsport, and the sports establishment had a public relations disaster wearing a moustache. The timing was almost too perfect. That same month, Michael Andretti had announced he was leaving the Newman Haas IndyCar team to chase his own Formula One dream with McLaren, leaving one of the best seats in American racing empty. 11 days after Andretti's announcement, on the 18th of September 1992, Newman Haas confirmed the deal. The team, co-owned by Hollywood actor Paul Newman and businessman Carl Haas, had just hired the fastest man in the world. American racing was about to find out what a wounded champion looks like when he has something to prove. Number 7. A British car for a British invasion. Here is the part of this story that often gets lost. Mansell was not stepping into some alien American machine. The car waiting for him was built in Huntingdon, England. Lola cars had been quietly conquering American open-wheel racing for years, and by 1993, the grid was overwhelmingly stocked with Lola chassis. The T93 was the latest of the breed, a carbon fiber monocoque wrapped around a turbocharged Ford Cosworth XBV8 that burned methanol and produced well north of 700 horsepower on the big ovals. So when American commentators framed the season as their series against a Formula One outsider, they were doing it while nearly every car on their own grid wore a chassis plate from Cambridgeshire. The car was a different animal to anything Mansell had raced. Formula One cars of the era were nimble sprinters built for 2-hour races on road courses. The Lola had to survive 500 miles at a stretch, running inches from concrete walls, with underbody tunnels generating so much suction that lifting off the throttle mid-corner could snap the car sideways without warning. Mansell later admitted the machine could do something truly nasty to a driver who did not respect it. There was one piece of continuity he insisted on. Throughout his Williams years, Mansell had raced with a red number 5 on his car, a quirk that began as a way to tell the two Williams entries apart and became a national institution once commentator Murray Walker started calling him Red 5. Newman Haas did a deal to acquire the number 5 from Penske, where it had belonged to Emerson Fittipaldi, so that Red 5 could cross the Atlantic intact. And waiting on the other side of the garage was a beautiful piece of symmetry. His teammate was Mario Andretti, the 1978 Formula One world champion. 13 years earlier, a young and unknown Mansell had made his Formula One debut at Lotus as Andretti's junior teammate. Back then, Mansell was so broke he had sold his own house to fund his climb through the junior categories, and the 3 races he ran alongside, Andretti brought him little beyond experience. Now the apprentice arrived as the reigning champion, sharing a garage with the master in the twilight of his career. 2 world champions, 1 team, and a car built in the English countryside, an ocean away from the series it dominated. The invasion was ready. Number 6. The rookie wins on debut. The 1993 season opened on the streets of Surfers Paradise, Australia on the 21st of March. The build-up was unlike anything American open-wheel racing had experienced. More than 800 accredited media descended on the Gold Coast, and weekend attendance was reported at 220,000 people. Every one of them wanted the answer to the same question. Was the Formula One champion actually going to be any good at this? The series, meanwhile, was calling him a rookie. Officially, formally on paper, a man with 30 Grand Prix wins carried the same designation as a kid fresh out of Indy Lights. The American establishment was not being entirely unreasonable. Their argument was that street fights with Ayrton Senna do not teach you how to run inches from a wall at 220 miles per hour, and plenty of Formula One drivers had come to America before and been humbled. But the label still read like a challenge. Emerson Fittipaldi had taken years to reach the top of American racing after his own Formula One career. Mario Andretti had spent a lifetime mastering both worlds. The consensus in the paddock was that the Englishman would be quick on the street circuits and road courses, and that the ovals would sort him out soon enough. Mansell answered it in the most emphatic way available. In qualifying, he produced a record-breaking lap to become the first driver in the history of the series to take pole position in his very first race. Then on Sunday, he converted it into victory. No rookie had ever won their first start either. One weekend into his American career, Nigel Mansell had already made history twice. The victory detonated on both sides of the Atlantic. In Britain, a public that had watched their hero pushed out of Formula One now had a redemption arc unfolding in real time. In America, a series that had signed him partly as a box office attraction realized it might have imported a wrecking ball. Mansell Mania was born, and crowds at the following rounds swelled to record numbers to watch the mustachioed Englishman work. But motor racing has a way of punishing confidence, and the next oval on the calendar was about to hand the rookie a lesson written in concrete. Number 5. The Wall at Phoenix. Phoenix International Raceway is a 1-mile oval, and cars of that era lapped it in roughly 20 seconds. Think about what that means. 20 seconds of sustained cornering load over and over with no straights long enough to let your neck and your brain reset. Mansell described his first oval experience as a shock to the system and the G-loading as the biggest surprise of all. Road course drivers get moments of rest built into every lap. Oval drivers get none. During practice for the second round of the season, the track bit him. Mansell lost the car and hit the wall so hard that the gearbox of his Lola punched a 12-inch hole clean through the concrete. There was a hole in Mansell too. The renowned surgeon Dr. Terry Trammell said he had never seen such significant damage to muscle and tissue in a driver's back. Mansell was ruled out of the race, and for weeks afterwards, doctors had to drain fluid from his lower back, often several times a day. The man who had won on debut 2 weeks earlier spent race day in a hospital gown instead of a fire suit. That someone turned out to be writing history of his own. Mario Andretti won the Phoenix race, the 52nd victory of his IndyCar career. It would prove to be the last of them, the final win for one of the greatest careers American motorsport has ever produced. Newman Haas had entered two legends and, one way or another, kept finding victory lane. He refused to let it end there. 2 weeks after the accident, with the wound still being drained and while on heavy medication, Mansell returned for the street race at Long Beach, put the Lola on pole position, and finished third. He then underwent surgery on the back at the end of April, days before Indianapolis practice opened, and it cost him the opening weekend of running at the Speedway. He would attack the biggest month of his American season in constant pain. The crash reframed everything. This was not a victory tour. The ovals were genuinely dangerous. His body was now compromised, and the biggest oval of them all was next on the calendar. Indianapolis. A place where his back would have to survive 500 miles, where the walls are less forgiving than Phoenix, and where 8 decades of tradition insist that newcomers get humbled. He arrived at the Speedway still recovering, still officially a rookie, and still required to pass the 4-phase rookie driving test before the establishment would let him loose. He breezed through all 4 phases. What happened over the rest of that month in May became one of the most famous near misses in the history of the race. Number 4, 16 laps from immortality. Mansell qualified 8th for the Indianapolis 500 despite limited practice and a back that was far from healed. Come race day, he did not drive like a man protecting an injury. He picked off Emerson Fittipaldi on lap 47, hunted down his own teammate for second, and worked his way to the front of the field in his first ever start at the Speedway. By the middle stages, he was in command of the biggest race on earth. He also reminded everyone he was new here. On lap 91, he drove straight past his own pit box and had to be pushed back by the crew. His verdict on himself afterwards was brutal and very British. No brakes, no brain, he said, grading his own performance as exactly what the series kept calling him, a rookie. But the mistake did not decide the race. With 16 laps to go, Mansell led the Indianapolis 500. Across the stints, he led 34 laps in total, and the greatest prize in American racing was sitting right there. Then, Lynn St. James slowed on track, the caution flags flew, and the field bunched up for a restart with about 15 laps remaining. Mansell had never done a competitive oval restart at Indianapolis in his life. Fittipaldi and Arie Luyendyk had done hundreds between them. When the green flag waved, the two veterans timed their runs perfectly and swept past him down the main straight before he understood what was happening. Mansell argued afterwards that he had followed the rules as he understood them and only accelerated when the green flag waved, while the veterans had wound up their speed through the short chute before the flag ever appeared. He accepted the result all the same. Whether that was gamesmanship or simply how Indianapolis had always worked depended entirely on which side of the Atlantic you asked. A few laps later, still chasing hard, he brushed the turn 2 wall. He finished third. Fittipaldi won his second Indianapolis 500, Luyendyk took second, and for the first time since 1915, the podium contained no American drivers at all. Mansell became the first rookie since Donnie Allison in 1970 to complete the full 500 miles, and he was named Rookie of the Year for the race. His own assessment gave the team full credit and put every mistake on himself. The veterans had taught the rookie a lesson about how Indianapolis actually works. What they did not appreciate was how quickly this particular rookie took notes. Before we get to the part of the season where Mansell turned that lesson into a weapon, a quick word. I go through the comments on every one of these videos, and the corrections, stories, and suggestions in there genuinely shape what this channel covers next. If you have memories of watching this season unfold, I want to read them. And if you enjoy motorsport history told properly, subscribing is the best way to keep these coming. Now, the Revenge Tour. Number 3, conquering the fastest race in the world. 1 week after Indianapolis, Mansell won at the Milwaukee Mile. His first oval win delivered 7 days after the restart that cost him the 500. The learning curve was not so much steep as vertical. But the real statement came in August at the Michigan the 500, the fastest race on the calendar and one of the fastest motor races anywhere on the planet. Michigan in 1993 was a brutal, weathered 2-mile bowl of banked concrete and asphalt, and the speeds were absurd. Mansell topped practice at over 231 miles per hour and then, in typical fashion, told reporters exactly what he thought of the bumps, calling it the bumpiest circuit he had driven anywhere in the world, and warning that nothing would change until someone got killed. His teammate answered on track. 53-year-old Mario Andretti took pole at 234.275 miles per hour, at the time the fastest official lap in the history of IndyCar racing, 25 years after he had taken pole for the very first IndyCar race at Michigan. The race itself became a Newman Haas exhibition. Andretti led the first 27 laps before Mansell went around the outside of him through turns 1 and 2 to take the lead. What followed was one of the most dominant oval drives of the decade. Mansell lapped the 5th-place car, then the 4th-place car, then his own teammate, and by lap 101 he had put the entire field a lap down, lapping the 2nd-place car of Raoul Boesel. The bumpy surface he had complained about was taking such a toll on him that he asked his crew for a painkiller during his final pit stop. When he eased his pace late on, Andretti clawed his lap back, but Mansell still won by more than 9 seconds. A 500-mile race at averages no other series on Earth could touch in only his 3rd ever oval start. Formula One had nothing that compared to this. The longest Grand Prix of the era ran less than 2 hours. Michigan demanded well over 2.5 hours of flat-out commitment on a surface actively trying to destroy the car and the man inside it, and Mansell had just made it look routine. The man America called a rookie was now beating the oval specialists at the discipline they had spent their entire careers mastering. And his next win would be the sweetest of the lot because it came against the exact 2 men who had embarrassed him at Indianapolis. Number 2. A birthday present at New Hampshire. On the 8th of August 1993, Nigel Mansell turned 40 years old. He celebrated at New Hampshire International Speedway, a tight, flat oval just over a mile long in a race that many observers still rank among the greatest in the history of the discipline. The fight came down to 3 men, Mansell and the 2 Penske drivers, Emerson Fittipaldi and Paul Tracy. The same Fittipaldi who had schooled him on the Indianapolis restart was now trying to hold him off in a straight fight, wheel to wheel, lap after lap on a short oval where there is nowhere to hide and no time to breathe. For most of the closing stages, it looked like the Penskes had it controlled. Then, in the final 15 laps, Mansell passed both of them. Not through pit strategy, not through a caution, but on track in racing conditions, one Penske and then the other. The crowd understood exactly what it was watching. An oval rookie on his 40th birthday with a damaged back, beating the best oval racers in America in a fair fight at their own game. Mansell later described oval racing as daunting, frightening, exhilarating and challenging all at once, and called racing wheel to wheel at those speeds mind-boggling. At New Hampshire, he made it look like he had been doing it for 20 years. Even the American media, which had spent the spring debating whether the Formula One champion deserved his hype, started reaching for a different vocabulary. This was no longer a curiosity or a marketing exercise. This was one of the finest drivers who ever lived, operating at the peak of his powers in a discipline he was learning in public. The win did more than avenge Indianapolis. It blew the championship fight open in his favor. Where the season had begun with a question about whether a road racer could even survive on ovals, it was now ending with a run of oval victories that the American drivers could not answer. Milwaukee, Michigan, New Hampshire, 3 ovals, 3 wins. 1 oval remained on the calendar that season, and it was the one where the rookie could finish the job. Number 1, 7 days as king of everything. The Bosch Spark Plug Grand Prix at Nazareth Speedway, the 19th of September, 1993. Mansell arrived knowing that victory would clinch the championship, and he put the Lola on pole to give himself the best possible start. Then the green flag waved and it all went wrong. Fittipaldi and Tracy jumped him immediately, shuffling Red 5 back to third and threatening to turn the coronation into a siege. What followed was the whole season in miniature. Mansell settled, learned and hunted. He worked back through the traffic on the tricky little Pennsylvania tri-oval, retook the lead and drove away to win the race, the fourth oval victory of his campaign and his fifth of the season. The title was his. In his first year, having missed a race through injury, the rookie had won the championship. In the entire history of the kart championship, no rookie had ever done that. He had done it at the age of 40, in a discipline he had first tried 6 months earlier. And then, history handed him something no driver had ever held and no driver has held since. Because the 1993 Formula One season was still running, Mansell was still the reigning Formula One world champion. For 7 days, until Alain Prost clinched the title in Portugal, one man simultaneously held the Formula One World Championship and the American National Championship. The two greatest crowns in open-wheel racing, worn at the same time by the man both continents had written off a year earlier. Think about what the field looked like that season. Fittipaldi, a two-time Formula One world champion and Indianapolis winner. Mario Andretti, a Formula One world champion and Indianapolis winner. Paul Tracy at his rawest and fastest. Al Unser Jr., Bobby Rahal. Mansell beat all of them, in their own backyard, in equipment they knew far better than he did. The aftershocks lasted years. Indianapolis expanded its media center by 100 workspaces to cope with the attention he had brought. Mark Knopfler of Dire Straits later wrote a song loosely inspired by that season and named it after the speedway at Nazareth. Record crowds had turned out at Toronto, Road America and Laguna Seca just to watch him work. And somewhere in Huntingdon, England, Lola had built the car that carried a discarded champion to the only double reign in the history of the sport. America had looked at Nigel Mansell and stamped the word rookie on him. He looked back, took their pole positions, took their 500-mile races, took their title and wore it next to the one Formula One never managed to take away from him. The T9300 now sits as a monument to the greatest answer any driver has ever given to being underestimated. Thank you for spending this one with me. If motorsport history like this belongs in your feed, hit subscribe and I will see you at the next one.